Hello and welcome to today's Q&A with our career coach, Laurie Macpherson. We're going to be talking all things CV through to interview and job offer. So if you've got any questions about your job search, please pop them in the comments and Laurie will be delighted to answer them. But Laurie is our resident career coach. She is an expert on CVs and interviews. I've already got some of your questions, so thank you so much for sending them through. If you've got any other questions as we're going, please pop them in the comments and we will get them answered. But we're going to be talking all about CVs, interviews and job offers today. So thank you so much, Laurie, for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you and learn more about this topic. So we've got the first question here. What are the most common mistakes people make on their CV and how can I avoid them?
Okay, so I am delighted to have this question. The first thing I would say is making it too long. Now, get lots of different answers around this. Honestly, when people go over 2 to 2.5-ish pages, they tend to start to talk about ancient history, interests and hobbies and other things you just don't need. So the most common mistake is making it too long because people will not read it. They don't have time. And if you haven't captured them straight away, they don't really want to. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, so keep it short, keep it relevant. The most important thing is to this role. Your CV is not a place to document everything you've ever done ever. Your CV is a sales document selling you into this role. So if the role is an HR manager and they're asking specifically for someone who's got, experience with unions, with pensions, with employee engagement programs, tell them that you are and have that. As long as, I always caveat this, as long as it's true, but you're tailoring it to this role. So what about your past history tells them that you're ready for this now? That's the stuff to focus on. Cut the other stuff. You want to go back no more than 10 to 15 years-ish, depending on your jobs. You don't want to talk about interests and hobbies. You don't want to use generic phrases like good at working in a team as well as that's one I would send to CV 101. Working on your own as well as part of a team. Avoid stuff like hard working. Make it relevant to this role. Am I looking at it as an employer and saying, yep, I absolutely understand how this person can do this role at this time. Mm-hmm. So cut the extra stuff and think about every single line that you put. So what? What is this answering an employer problem? If the employer is asking for someone to do this, are you telling them you've done that previously? So therefore, I can do it again. Make it so simple for them to understand your story and how you got to this point. If it's confusing and difficult, they'll make up a story, which usually is not particularly favorable. So tell them your story in a clear way that, with the space that you've got, that explains why you're here today. Personal summary, then some achievements. Really, really important. Do not skip this step. Don't leave off any numbers. Don't tell me you can't find any numbers, because you can and you have to. So if you've worked as part of a payroll team processing, 100 invoices, 1,000 invoices, 1 million invoices a month, tell them that, so that they know what level you work at, and then they know that you can just rinse and repeat that in their organization.
Wow, great. What would be your advice to somebody looking to make a significant career change? How should they present this on their CV? And I get loads of these. You get a lot of people get in touch with me that want to do something completely different than they've been doing for the past 10, 15 years or longer. How should those people go about their job search and present that on their CV?
So it's really difficult. And what I would say is, don't underestimate that this is a difficult thing to do, because, you're having to go from X to Y. And I always talk about when I worked on ships, I used to work on cruise. Oh, God, I've just totally frozen, gone.
Oh, I can see you. Huh.
Oh, can you? My screen's just gone black. Oh, sorry about that. My screen just went black mid-broadcast. So, yeah, when I used to work on cruise, we used to go from, lovely Med to Egypt. And you don't get there just unfortunately by pressing a button.
Yeah.
You have to do what's called a repositional cruise, where you have to do a lot of twisting and turning and lots of CD with churning and effort and not a lot happening to get you to where you need to be. And I would love people to think about a career transition as a repositional cruise. It's got a bit of chugging through the water to go. It's not going to happen straight away. So first thing is, what do you want and why? Have a think about what the gap is. So where are you now? I'm going to use teachers as a really...
I know, because I get a lot from teachers. And often actually on that, what do they want? Or I get a lot from people that just want to get out.
Yeah, so get out. So,
but they don't tell, or they don't seem to be able to articulate what they want to, do once they've got out.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there. One, if you just want out, get out, do something to get you out. And sometimes it's a case of, I'll do 2 jobs. Now, especially for a teacher who's worked in teaching for 15 years, then they meet this mad Scottish woman on the internet who says, you need to do 1 job and then another job really quickly after it. And they're like, whoa, no, my identity's already in tatters, please. That's the reality. A job to get out and another job to get to where you want to be is common, or more than a couple of moves. If you think about it like a chessboard, it might take a couple of moves. It might not be this beautiful, seamless thing that we want it to be, because the employer, I hear a lot about giving me a chance and I could do this. The employer doesn't have to take a punt, not at this point in time. The job market just now, there are so many applicants who've done the thing before. So I would always urge people to reframe it. What's in it for them having you? And it's not to say you haven't got the skills, but if you haven't got the experience, it's unlikely they're going to take you. So what do you need to get? So for example, if you are a teacher, I always talk to people about low-hanging fruit. Liz, what's an obvious next move? So for example, creating teacher materials for teachers. Yeah. Obvious next move, something in education, something working for a charity that helps children. Yeah. These are kind of often obvious ways out. Now, you might stay and love it, or you might go and develop some skills so that your CV is not that of a classroom teacher. I've had this quite a lot. Classroom teacher, very good, done it for years, wanting to do other thing and going for a totally inappropriate job because I've done a bit of that, or I like that. It's not going to land. And unfortunately, it is quite a tricky transition. And the big elephant in the room is the cash, the salary. There's often has to be a drop. So if you can't afford to drop, how can you restructure your life so that you can? And it could be downsizing, it could be all sorts of different things, so that you can start this process, because you're not likely to just get the same amount of money for something you've never done. And that is, again, the sad reality of leaving teaching. So coming out of that, for talking's sake, pick a low-hanging fruit to get you out. Could you work for one of these companies? Could you do some TEFL tutoring? Again, all depends on your situation.
Or even supply teaching, to supplement something else while you got going.
Well, it's a couple of days of supply, doesn't have to be the dream, while you learn something else, where you go and do a quick TEFL course so you can do some tutoring online, where you start that small business. Again, you have to have some money in the bank or not be expecting a lot of earnings for the first few years, realistically. But bit of a, how do I get out? What's my low-hanging fruit? And then where am I going? Have a look at the jobs that you want eventually. See who you know or how you can get a connection to someone who might do that job. LinkedIn is your friend for this. You can search for them by title. You can add them without knowing them. You can build a relationship, and then you can ask for a curious conversation. How did you get the job? What do you enjoy? What sort of things should I be doing? Have a look at what they've got that you currently haven't. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to say something simple but not easy, or vice versa. Go and get it. So whether that's taking a course, whether that's doing some voluntary work to get you the experience, whether that's the PTA, whether that's, the kids' football club, to get you the thing that you haven't got. It usually doesn't matter where you get it. Just get it so that you then have the skills and experience to go into the next role. It's not the employer's job to just hire you because you're a nice person and good at your job. You have to demonstrate that you are what they need at that time. So absolutely. I think that's kind of key. You've got to sort of think what's in it for them, so make sure you are a really good candidate. Really crucial is building a network of folk in your new area, which again, LinkedIn is your friend. If you're studying HR, looking to get into HR, add HR consultants, business partners, managers now, so that you can see what they're talking about, start engaging with them, turn up at their networking, join their online sessions, join their Facebook and LinkedIn groups now, so that when you start looking for jobs, it's not from a completely cold start.
I think that's a good advice. And also, I mean, you mentioned really, why should they take a punt on you? And I think a lot of it is, I sometimes have the people message me and I'll say, I've got a retraining opportunity, and they don't want to invest in themselves. But actually, you've got to take a punt on yourself before somebody else will take a punt on you. So, if you want to move into HR and you don't have HR experience, you need to take that bet on yourself and, invest in that CIPD qualification.
Yeah, get it. Whether that's your pal started a business and is going to hire an apprentice, for talking's sake, go in, learn the procedures to create their policies. Then you have evidence that you've done it. It doesn't actually usually matter how. And the other thing that's really good for folk in transition, not saying it's for everyone, is civil service, because they don't care where you got. They don't want CVs. They just want applications. So they don't care where you got the skill. They just want you to demonstrate that you've got it.
That's really good advice. Brilliant. I've had a message as well from somebody that has an interview for a job they really want. So they just wondered what would be your top tips for preparing for an interview.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is, yes, do your research on them, of course, and do a bit of sleuthing. Go detective. Don't just stick to the website and looking at the values. Who's their CEO? Who's the chair? Have they recently been appointed? You can find all this out quite quickly between website and LinkedIn. Have a bit of a look and see what are they talking about? What are their values? Also have a look at, just Google them as a company. We found some amazing intel a few years back. It wasn't on the website yet. This company had literally had like an £80 million investment that week. Wow. So we were able to say at the end, as one of our killer questions, I've seen that you've got an £80 million investment this week. That, it's a clear sign that you expect the market to grow. How might that affect me going into role? And what she was basically saying is, will it end up being like a cluster manager, because there'll be more sites and more things to do? And that was a great question, because, wow, she knows that. Now, it took us 30 seconds to find online, but most people won't do that because they'll just look at the company's own website. So that's a really good tip. But the other thing is, know you. So yeah, know them, but know you, know your story, especially if you've had your CV written, which is grand. Some folk don't know their own CV, and you ask them a question, they're a bit like, when was that, or where was that? And think about the sort of golden thread that runs through it all. You might have jumped about a bit, but what's the thing that holds it all together? Or have you genuinely moved because you needed to get into a different sector, or have you gone away and decided to come back? Know your own story as well, so that you can convincingly talk about that and be able to sort of share what's shaped and what's led you to where you are today, and how, again, always remembering that every employer is thinking, what can you do for me? In all of this communication. So prepare with that in mind. Look at the job description. Those are the questions they're going to ask. If they ask, if they say you'll be managing a multidisciplinary team across various regions, there's going to be a question sounding like, tell me about a time that you've managed a multidisciplinary team across, so be prepared for those, because they're coming. Be prepared to tell them your story. Be prepared to tell them why you want the job. And if your answer's a bit, maybe think about not going for it, because they really want to know why this specific role and what you can bring to it. And remember that they will be scoring you. They will be scoring against competencies. They have to. So if you don't give them a solid enough example, they can't give you the marks, whether or not you could do the job. So again, go away. What are those questions going to be? What are my answers? It's not going to come to you in 30 seconds. So know that you do need to set aside some time for prep, and you might need a bit of help with some of the digging, because you don't automatically walk around thinking, I got a 26% increase in that over 3 years. That's not how our brains and thankfully mouths work. You might need a bit of help with that. And then at the end, definitely have some questions for them. And good questions are about, what you've found in your intel, and also something around how would I, what would I need to do in the first 6 months to be really successful in role? What does good look like? What does excellent look like in the behaviours? Anything you've spotted, I've noticed that you're expanding into such. How might that help me?
Okay. Next question. What's the best way to tackle tricky interview questions, such as, what are my weaknesses?
Yes, love it. So first of all, Weaknesses I'll come back to. If you know there's a question coming, I would look at this the other way again. Think about the employer. What's their flag going to be about you? What's the elephant in the room? So if someone's interviewing me, the elephant is, so Laurie, I see that you love your flexibility and you've just been on holiday and you're away for a month and you love a glass of wine at 3 o'clock on a Friday. How can I trust you as my employee? You know, so know what an employer is likely to ask you because of, is it a gap? Is it a career change? Is it, you know, what's the red flag? What's the elephant in the room? And then you have 2 choices. Wait, sweating for them to ask it. Well, you go, and you can't hear or concentrate on anything else because you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to ask about that 4-year gap. Or head it off at the pass.
So how would you do it like someone that's got a 4-year gap or someone that likes to flex like you? You know?
Yeah, so tell them straight away. I would tell them it in the first question so they don't have to ask the gap question. Gap questions often number 2 after tell me about yourself, walk me through your CV, tell me about any employment gaps. If you've already answered it, I've seen this done. She's just gone with the red pen through that question because you've answered it. So, you know, you do your past, present and future, all about the stuff you've done in the past. Then you would say, I've taken some time off to care for family. And again, I think it's really important to stress, we don't need to apologize as women for caring for people. Either we do it or someone else does it and we have to pay them.
Yeah.
So no need for apology. You do it or you hand it to someone and we pay. There's a transaction there. So it's your choice. During that time, I have, you know, been an active member of the PTA, whatever might be relevant to this particular role, or I've kept up to date by, and answer that in the first question and the tell me about yourself, because they're going to ask it and you're going to feel nervous, or you can take control of it. See them nod to each other and go, okay, she's cared for a child. I've been at home caring. While I've done that, I've kept in touch. I've attended networking. I've, you know, still subscribed to HR Monthly or whatever it is that you've done. Attended Disrupt HR events, etc., to stay abreast of trends such as, you know, legislation post-Brexit around global mobility, and they go, okay. All they want to know is, do you know what you're doing? Are you able to jump straight back in? And for someone like me, lots of self-employed people, big elephant in the room, are looking for work right now because self-employment is super tough. And lots of them come and they say that's the flag. You know, the employer saying...
Because I was going to say that if I was applying for a job, I think my flag would be why your business hasn't worked out, or you'll want to jump out as soon as, you know, things maybe pick up and you'll want to start your business again. And I think that's would be a flag over self-employed people. What would you say to somebody?
It is. First of all, know that it is. And lots of people come to me and say, but I've developed loads of skills. Yeah, you have, but an employer doesn't know how they help them. All they see is, God, she's always off on holiday, or, you know, you're always talking, of course, because it's your business, about flex. And they're like, well, I need you in the office at 9 o'clock. And you're like, you know, so... so you have to say, yeah, I've had a great time over the last 4 years. I've learned so much, you know, from recruitment to marketing. I've done tons of networking. The benefit to you will now be that I have an amazing network here in such and such. I have a huge amount of connections who we can, you know, utilize for X, Y, and Z. I'm fully prepared to swap my flexibility for some stability. I would dearly love not to be, and again, I always say to people, read the room, if they're being a bit, you know, dry, don't do this. If they're a bit fun, you can say, I would really love not to have to check messages when I'm in the toilet. And I would really love to, you know, give all my all during my working hours, but not have to constantly worry and have the anxiety of running a business and a cost of living crisis. So I'm willing to swap my flexibility for that. And in return, you get hugely motivated. You can see how motivated and how, you know, committed I am, expert, who has a massive, massive network. And then, and this is a real top tip, then I would stop talking. Because we tend to over-apologise.
Yeah, we do, don't we? We'll tend to go, oh, I think it's hard when you're talking to somebody and they go silent and you think, oh, I hate that awkward. I hate those awkward silences.
Yeah. The beauty is in the joy, and the beauty is in the silence. You know, I'm from a sales background, and I used to say to my teams all the time, stop talking. Give them a minute, sit in the aux, because they'll have to come back before you do. You know, that's how questions work. So yeah, know that it's coming rather than being a lot of people get defensive. You know, well, I was looking after my yeah, that's great. So don't be defensive. You were doing something you chose to do. Now you're choosing to do something else. That's life. Lives are squiggly and wiggly. You know, I've chosen to run a business. If it doesn't work, I'll choose to go back to employment because I have a mortgage to pay. But I will sell that in. So don't think, oh my goodness, they have to hire me because I've got all these great skills. My marketing skills maybe have no earthly use to my next employer, for example, or they might not know that they are yet. So it's your job to think, what's this employer likely to have a bit of an issue with? And I'm going to tackle it. I had a great client who had done something. She'd whistleblown. She'd spotted something grim and awful and had whistleblown. And we talked about whether or not she should mention it at interview. And in this case, again, it was that blow it up, talk about it straight away, because they'll know. So you can either wait for the Ox question. What they're basically wondering is, are you a bit of a troublemaker? Or, no, I had to deal with this because it was so awful. So get it out of the way at the beginning, and then you won't have to sit panicking waiting for it.
Okay. Brilliant. I love that advice. Great. That's really good advice. I'll keep that if I ever need when there's mortgage payment, you know, everything's going up. Right. And then the next question, actually, this is a good one in the cost of living crisis. Can you suggest, give some tips on how to negotiate salary and when you should do that during the interview process or a job offer?
Yeah. So first of all, do not mention the cost of living crisis. That's not the employer's problem. They're probably struggling to pay their electricity bill and they're aware of a cost of living crisis. Many companies have given a small 1 to 5% COL increase, and that's great. But this is about your worth as an employee. So, you know, first of all, we talk all the time in this industry about showing the salary. You know, it's an absolute pain in the behind if you don't know. I'm quite good at deciphering. Pool table, nope, they want a youngling, you're 52. Do not go, do not apply, forget, because they're going to pay you 15 grand less than you're used to. If you think it's at the right level, you've gone through the process, it's a case of at the end of it saying, you know, thank you so much, that I'm so delighted to take you up on that offer. However, and it's been really, really clear. And again, as women, we struggle to talk about money because it's seen as greedy and grabby, and people with lots of money are seen as othered to us. So this sounds weird. Practice saying a figure out loud so you don't stumble. That sounds fantastic. However, I was looking more for around the 50,000 mark. I believe that with all of the let me go back. Not I believe, with all the skills and experience that I'd be bringing, plus my massive network, plus all of the knowledge I have around this area, I'm a real subject matter expert, and my additional qualifications I've taken in X, Y, and Z. I've benchmarked the role, and that would be an appropriate salary. And again, stop talking.
Okay. Brilliant.
You know, in my current role, I've got 3 employees. This would require me to have 21. Stop talking. They go, oh yeah, I suppose we should pay her a little bit more then. You know, if it's not monetary, if they cannot and will not give you money, what else would suit you? For me, I always enjoyed buying a holiday. I love a holiday. So I used to be quite happy to buy holidays. Is it private healthcare? Is that super important? Again, in a cost of living crisis with a crumbling NHS, is that the thing that you want? What are your boundaries?
Yeah, sometimes again, the pension, you know, that's
your pension
really good. If you look at that, you think, oh, actually, that's a really good pension.
Yeah, I've seen loads of different perks, and you again can think about what perks work for you. Mine was holidays, some and private healthcare. Some people's might be, you know, life insurance and things like that. What's important to you? Work it out and have a baseline and know where you're prepared to walk from. But get used to saying it out loud. And I think we can really struggle with this, especially if you've come from a background where you're not used to asking for big sums of money. But, you know your worth in the market. Do your benchmarking as well. Have a look at LinkedIn. Under the work tab, you can see salaries. It is global, so it can be a bit off. Look at Glassdoor, not for all the narky reviews, but just for, you know, a benchmark, and have a look at what other people are getting and where does this role sit so that you're confident. And the key with this is to sound confident, not do that. I'd quite like £50,000, but if you can't give me that, it's okay. Type thing that people are often prone to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, final question, because I know you've got to run off. I had an interview. This person had an interview last week. They thought it went really well, but they've not heard anything back. So how should they effectively follow up without sounding too pushy?
Yeah, definitely do it. So first of all, do you know have you got the email? Is it the HR person? Is it who was in the interview? Who can you contact that you've got the details for? Go to them, send them a follow-up email saying, so enjoyed the conversation last week. You know, loved finding out more about the role in the organisation, wondered when you might be likely to make a decision. As simple as that. I've also seen it work really well is when someone had mucked up an interview at one question, not the whole thing, because then they can't hire you because they can't score you. She'd done really, really well, and she posted about it on LinkedIn. She was devastated. She totally just went blank at one question, and she knew the answer, but it just would not come. And she sent a thing out saying, "I'm so disappointed in myself, blah, blah, blah." And I took a punt because she could have said, "Don't be so cheeky," or "It's none of your business." But I took a bit of a punt, and I messaged her privately and said, "Send them an email. Say, thank you so much. Lovely to meet you today. I cannot believe that I forgot X in the moment. What I meant to say was X, Y, Z." She got the job.
Yeah. We're all human, aren't we? So
we're all people, and sometimes it just goes out. I've had a really good interview, and they've asked a question that was actually about an interest. They said, like, "What did you last see?" I put in, back in the day before I knew better, I'd put that I liked going to the theatre. And because I hadn't prepped that bit, they said, "What did you last see at the theatre?" And my mind just went blank. And they must have thought I was lying. And I'm not. I'm at the theatre probably monthly, but I just couldn't in the moment. My brain just wouldn't go into that different. I was like, wait a minute, this is an interview theatre. So don't be scared to go back and say, as I say, not if you know that you have not answered anything or made a total hash of the whole interview. And again, is that real or is that your brain? But if you've got something you've forgotten or missed, absolutely. And definitely anyway, follow up, because most people, the key to all of this is most people won't do this. Yeah. So if you do, it just shows keenness and, "Oh, we've had a lovely email from that girl. When are we going to make a decision?"
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Brilliant. Well, I know you've got to get off. So how can people contact you and find out more about you, and what type of services do you offer?
So I am mostly on LinkedIn. I've also got a Facebook page and Instagram as Laurie Macpherson, and Laurie Macpherson Career Wingwoman. I offer digital courses, guides. I've got a LinkedIn course for people who are wondering how to make the most of that during the whole process. And I also offer one-to-one services, often around working out what you want and then going and getting it. So that can be CV preparation, application support, interview prep, negotiating your salary, or how to make it your LinkedIn tell your story so that you get contacted by the people you want to see and be seen by.
Brilliant. All right, lovely. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Laurie, for joining us today.
Thank you.